What does power look like when it's exercised through access rather than through authority? That question frames this conversation with CQ. CQ is a senior client advisor at the 1916 company. He's a co-founder of CP Time Collective, which started right here in Washington, D.C., and he is a global voice in contemporary watch culture. CQ occupies a rare position in horology, one where relationships, trust, and narrative matter as much as a rarity of a piece or its price. CQ approaches watches not as transactions, but as chapters, and as a curator, he guides clients through isolated objects towards collections with vision, collections that express identity, memory, and belonging. In this episode, we explore how that shift reflects a deeper change in where power now sits in the watch world. We talk about access, who gets to collect, who gets to define taste, and how communities like CP Time are quietly redrawing the boundaries of legitimacy by creating space for voices and perspectives long left outside traditional horological institutions. This is a conversation about geography and movement. From the Caribbean to New York City, from emerging markets to established capitals, CQ brings a global lens to how watches circulate culturally and how heritage is being actively reinterpreted rather than passively inherited. In this conversation, we examine the role of advisors, of media, and digital platforms in shaping modern collecting, how social networks decentralize influence, how narratives are built collaboratively, and how watches today function as tools of cultural participation as much as symbols of legacy. This episode isn't about replacing the old guard with a new one. It's about expanding the room. So grab a chair, and there is a place for you in this table as well. Because when access becomes influence, collecting becomes political. All right, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Watches and Politics. And I'm very happy to have with me someone who I'm happy to call a friend, Siquan. Everybody knows him by CQ. But the reason why I am so relaxed of calling him a friend is because everyone in the industry, in the watch industry, that is how they consider him. Today we are going to speak everything about community building, everything about trends, and more. So CQ has an interesting background coming from the Caribbean, establishing himself very deep in the watch industry. And I'm just happy to make this conversation with him. CQ, welcome to Watches and Politics.
Eddie, thank you so much. That was an amazing introduction, man. You're too kind. I'm so excited we could finally do this. Been talking about this for quite a while. I love your show, so I'm very happy to be a part of this season.
Well, thank you very much. And finally, it's happening. I know you've been so busy and with things going on in watches and in politics side.
Yeah, crazy.
So I'm just happy we had a minute to do this for our listeners. Now, I want to always start with what comes to your mind first when you hear watches and politics. What is that first image, that first concept, first story that comes to your mind? And it's an open-ended question. You can think of anything.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question. I see that you always ask people this, and it's so many watches come to my mind because I think watches and politics, they weave their way throughout history together in such an interesting way. But one watch that really stands out to me, or one collector situation, I should say, would be the last emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, and his love of Omegas and vintage Omegas that have come to auction from his collection have done super well. And as somebody, I'm from St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Rastafarian culture is very big there. And I remember when I first saw a Hodinkee article about, I believe, the Omega pocket watch that belonged to him being auctioned, and just realizing, for me, I always feel like an outsider sometimes in this world because I'm, from the Caribbean selling watches. There's not too many people like me, outside of the Caribbean doing what I do. And to see that there was a huge collector in Haile Selassie who had such a big impact, of course, to Jamaica, the Rastafarian culture, which spread around the world, was very interesting to me to see somebody who, looked like me, who's part of a culture that I'm very, kind of intertwined with as well, be in watches and be a big watch collector, to have watches made for him from by such a historic brand like Omega. For me, was a moment that always sticks out in my brain.
That's amazing, honestly. And the reason why I like to always start with this is because everybody comes from a different point when it comes to watches and politics, and it means different things to different peoples. But CQ, now you describe the client advisor relationship as more of a curator than a salesman. And I'm a big fan of that description. So how does that shift reflect a change in who shapes horological value?
Yeah, that who shapes horological value? That's such a great question. First, I don't see myself as a salesperson. I think when I started out in this career, I definitely was a salesperson. My goal was just to extract dollars out of wallets, right? I see people come into my store and I want to extract value. I want to put, food on the plate, feed the family. As I fell deeply in love with watches, and for me, my career, I started in the Caribbean. I don't come from a family of watch collectors. We appreciate jewelry and things like that and other photography and stuff like that, but never watches, just not something that's part of what we really talked about. And the start of my journey of really being in love with watches is seeing somebody buy a Patek Philippe, seeing somebody buy a watch in the small 36, 38 millimeter, whatever it was, spending 40,000 plus on it. And they were so happy to hand over their credit card for this watch. And the wife was happy and hugging, and mom was there. And I just couldn't I'm like, man, you're spending 40 grand. This thing is so small. You could have got like a big dope chain. You could have bought a bracelet, all this stuff. So I had to figure out why, right? And my journey into why people love fine watches at Patek Philippe, JLC, and all these other great watches that we talk about really opened up my eye into, yes, there's commerce happen here. And yes, my job is to sell people, but this person isn't just buying a ornament, a piece of clothes, or something that they're going to use. This person is actually buying an accent to their life, right? This is something, a Patek Philippe, that person, I believe he became maybe he just passed his bar or something like that. A big milestone in his life just happened. He tied that into, hey, when I hit this milestone, I'm going to buy this watch. My dream is to get this watch. So I found myself being like, I'm not a salesperson. I'm more so a custodian, right? And then when you get into what it takes to make a fine watch, right? What it takes to become a watchmaker. It's like somebody dedicated their life to making this watch. So who am I to just be somebody to just throw it around like a trinket, not wear gloves, not present it the best way I can, not learn everything I can about this watch that I'm presenting, because somebody literally dedicated their life, dedicated hours and hours of just sitting in silence to make sure the regulation of this watch is perfect. So this is a baby I need to take care of. So it really changed how I thought about the relationship. Because again, this is not just me trying to put something on your wrist. This is you taking something to be part of your life and to be an accent of your life, possibly forever, and then go on to generations of generations. So it made me really change of how I think about the relationship of me in watches and what I'm doing from, we're more like fine art advisors, especially at this price point that, I'm fortunate to sell watches at, right? So when you go into art space, there are many people who handle it how I handle it. They advise you on your collections. They dig in deeper to see what you think, what's your philosophy about life. and then let's put the dollars and cents into it. And that's what I try to do. I try to tap into who the collector is, really help them define a strategy and what they want to enjoy, what they want to get out of this experience of buying watches. The dollars and cents, they come at the end for me. And I think that's really how it should be when we're talking about fine timepieces.
When I was asking this question, and every question that I ask, I want to learn something, and this is why I do what I do. I like learning from people that have the insights of what I want to educate the listeners when it comes to watches and politics, and that is a part of it. And we're talking about how sales is being restructured. So it's not about sales representative, it's about curating. But then you also formed communities, and one of them is one of my favorite, CP Time, where you are a co-founder. So that is also changing how we're thinking about watches and in watch collecting, watch spaces. So how does that initiative challenge traditional power structures in watch collecting?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I'm so fortunate to be a part of CP Time, to be honest with you. It's been an amazing lesson in our lives, co-founded with Dr. Al Coombs. And the one thing about watches I found, and this collecting hobby, it's so much better when you do it with others. And it introduces you to, I used to always hear it. Oh, I met this great person through watches and some of the best people you ever meet. But I can truly tell you, I've been in the watch industry for going on 15 years this year. Some of the best people, the best relationships, the best experiences that I've had through watches. But what CP Time came from was this. It was just connecting through watches, and it's just me and Al Coombs, and I happened to be in Dubai at the time. And one day we just like, is there a community for us? Is there like a collector group, a collective? Because there's all these regional groups, and I was in Dubai, so there's Arab Watch Club, Dubai Watch Club, and so many great different clubs out there, Qatar Watch Club and things like that. And the one thing I found being in the watch industry is there's not a lot of people who look like me on my side of the counter, right? In the Caribbean, yes, but as you start to go away from the Caribbean, and I've been fortunate to sell watches all over the world, not many people who look like me. And on the collector side, there are tons of people who look like me, but often fragmented. When you go to a watch event, you'd see mostly people who don't look like me, and there'll be one or two people who look like me. And for whatever reason, that's just how it is. Not to say that there's this big structure, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, we have to remember that most of these watches come from Switzerland, which is a very small place, which doesn't have the most diverse culture because it's a very small country in Europe, right? So when that extends into the market and who get invites in different places, it just becomes, who your friends are, who are in your most intimate circles, and we can't blame people for different things like that. So we said, hey, we want to create a space where Black people and people who just love the Black culture. So CP Time stands for culture perspective. And we say it's watch collecting through the lens of Black culture, because it's not about everybody being Black. It's not a big rally, everything, but we want to create a safe space for people who are from our culture and who love and embrace our culture, which is honestly everybody from the world, where, hey, come to our events. The music might be a little bit different. Things might be, the energy is going to always be great. You're going to see a lot of people who look like you. You're going to see a lot of people who don't look like you, but everybody loves the culture and they love watches. And that's what we wanted to blend. And this becomes a great challenge to the industry, because when we have these events, the reactions from brands and people internationally, they've never seen a room of Black watch collectors like this, not all athletes, right? And I think that's so important to show consumers, other collectors, and brands themselves. It's like, the money comes from everywhere. It doesn't come from just sports guys. It doesn't just come from celebrities, and brands need to know that. But consumers as well, collectors, that as well. Another big reason I started this club is I had a meeting with a gentleman, Black gentleman, big finance guy. He was looking at the FP when they were a little bit cheaper than today. And so we're doing the presentation. It was on a Saturday, a day like today, actually. And he just stops, right? And he just stops and he says, "Can I ask you a question?" And I'm like, "Sure." And he's like, It gets real quiet. And I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, do people who look like me and you buy these types of watches? And I was just like, I was shocked. Because here's this person who's so cultured. He's on the board of all these art societies, art collector, big fashion guy, all these things. And he was looking for that belonging. You know, he was looking to see, like, am I just this crazy guy? Am I just this person, this oddball out there? And I had to let him know there's so many big collectors who look like us. We're in silos because so many people in the same position that he was in. Is like, I don't think there's nobody else out there. So I want to CP Time, me and I want to CP Time to be that lighthouse in the darkness where no matter what, where the bat signal, you could come home. You can always connect through us. And it's been a real blessing to see that experience replicated. You see young collectors who've never been in a room with a lot of people who look like them, who get to learn and share information. And then we get to expose these brands to a culture that's always been around them. We're some of the biggest consumers, right? But we've never been tailored to. And one thing being in the Middle East taught me is they control how they're I don't know how the consumer experience is very tailored. Let's say that there's these groups have collaboration watches when there's events and stuff like that. Everything's very tailored. And I find in America, on the US side, everything's very spread out. Everything is generic. Everything is bland. Even Asia as well. You go to Asia, there's always these great Singapore editions, these Hong Kong editions, mainland China. When there's Asian New Year's, there's already these great editions. But when it's US focused, it's very generic. It's very bland. So part of me seeing that in the Middle East is like, well, if I show them what they have here, maybe these brands will think a little bit different. And a lot of them have been super receptive, and it's been awesome.
And I can attest to that going to CP Time events, knowing all of you guys, I mean, including Alcoms, and it's amazing. And it's always fun to be around. You talked about Middle East, about Africa, about Latin America. So how do you think these new geographies are altering the historical narratives and market geographies of high-end watches?
So I think it's very interesting, right? Because I spent about 2.5 years in the Middle East. I opened up Watchbox, Dubai Watchbox Middle East. So in Dubai and in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So I got to really embrace the culture out there and see how it's a whole different economy. And one thing when you look at these different regions is they're getting stronger. They're more high net worth individuals in all these places. Of course, in the Middle East, there's always been wealth there. But when you look at Africa, so many new millionaires, and the economies of these countries are getting stronger. They're becoming more safe places for brands to have established boutiques and established retail networks. Same thing with Latin America. Mexico is one place I always think about because there's always SIAR, and you always see so much huge, great limited editions and such great watches there. And you always, if you just listen to the wrong things, you think about Mexico, you're like, man, it's a rough place, but it's just a huge economy that's booming, and a lot of great watch collectors I know personally are from the region. So you're going to see Switzerland, in my opinion, on the commercial side, start to really tap into these networks more and more and more. And when places are safe to do commerce, I think brands will pop boutiques up, because what brands have realized finally, and maybe they knew it way back when, and then forgot it somewhere, is how to get in touch with the people, how to really talk to your consumer and know what the collector enthusiast wants from the watch. Again, a watch is something that you're wearing every day. It's part of you, right? It's more than your shoes, it's more than your shirt, because it's the face that you see every day, and you look at it maybe 100 times a day if you're somebody like me and yourself, right? So I think brands are a little bit more open now to try to figure out how to tap into these different markets. And you see how the geography of the economics have changed, right? Mainland China used to be a huge big driving force in the watch industry and in exports, and you see that brands made really big bets and opened up so many boutiques all over mainland China. And now mainland China has been very soft and very quiet in terms of their consumer buying. So they have to figure out a way to, where do these watches go? Look at the US this year. With the implementations of tariffs, the U.S. is one of the biggest exportation market or importation market for watches. You add 39% tariff on it, all of a sudden the brands are like, where do we send the watches? Where do we sell the watches? How does it go? So they start looking at all these new regions. Now, I think another aspect that you think about is on the manufacturing side. I think one of the sleeping giants that's really waking up right now is, fine watchmaking from Asia. The Japanese watchmakers are producing excellent things. Chinese watchmakers, same thing. Places like Cambodia have watchmaking schools that are doing really amazing things. So I think you're going to see a really interesting situation in the next 5 to 10 years where Switzerland isn't, and they already aren't, right? But a real big challenge will be presented in terms of very high quality watches coming from different regions. And people are going to have to explain, why shouldn't I buy a watch that comes from Japan, that comes from Cambodia, that comes from mainland China? If it's finished to the same quality, if everything else checks out, why? Why shouldn't I look somewhere else or really take a good look of from watchmaking from different places? So I think a lot is going to change in the next 5 to 10 years because you're seeing the love of watches really being embraced, because of course, if somebody from Kosovo or somebody from where I'm from is a watchmaker, I'm going to support. So you're seeing all these regions, when they find their shining star, all the big collectors are huddling around and putting their money where their mouth is. So I think very exciting times and very uncertain times for a lot of people in good and bad ways.
Well, I think, according to what I'm hearing from you, there is a democratization of the geopolitics of watchmaking then. Because
slowly but surely.
Because there are, different places that are growing up. But also watchmaking has always been a matter of patronage. So of course, like people from that culture are going to support people that maybe come from that culture. And good that we have these kind of collectors that can do that. Yes. Democratization, pluralism is always good. It will always be a benefit. So when we met, we briefly spoke about your passion about watchmaking school in the Caribbean. And I want to hear more about it, and I want to open up to the audience because I didn't know about that. And I'm sure a lot of people will find it interesting to hear it from the first time.
Yeah, so I'm pushing to start a foundation that will open a watchmaking school in the Caribbean. When we started CP Time, me and Al did a video on a Watchbox 1916 video. And for some reason, I was just like, I just want to put this in the universe. I would like to start a watchmaking school in the Caribbean. I'm from St. Thomas. I'm from the jewelry capital of the world, some people would say, especially when you're talking about just the buying and transactions of it. I didn't know about watchmaking as a career path. I barely knew about watch sales as a career path. They're great craftsmen and artisans there, and they need to be shown this opportunity. So anyways, I did it on this one video. I just put it out there. I had no idea how I'll do this. Then we did another video a couple of years later. I said, I want to say it again. All right, I want to say it. And then, around 2023 or so, I was like, well, maybe I should really think how we can get this going. So, last year I really said, all right, let's go full force and make this happen. I went home for a little bit, and I researched, right? Because somebody said, hey, there used to be a Timex factory on the island across from my St. Croix. And I was like, there's Timex here? So I found out that in my island, especially St. Croix, which is right across from St. Thomas, there's a rich history of watch manufacturing there. And so much so that at one time, 10% of all the watches imported to the US were assembled in my islands, in the Virgin Islands. So you had Hamilton there, so many different big brands that are, they're not in my head right now, but employ tens of thousands of people. 4 million plus watches a year were entering the US from my island. So there was a point there where if a watch was, 50% made or assembled in the Virgin Islands, you could import it to the US. It could be US made, and no import tax. So Swiss companies use that avenue, and they establish these manufacturing companies. And it was mostly assembly happening there. But this was a great boom, a great industry up until 2015. This was coming, right? So when I learned about this and that there were watch assembly plants in my islands up until 2015, 2016, I was like, it was meant to be. It's fate that, I was sent on this journey through watchmaking, and something in my head just said, hey, you should make a school. And then you do the history, and it's literally, it went from me trying to do this novel, crazy thing that, like, what are you doing? You're trying to set up this school in the islands, to, hey, you're just dusting off a history that was already there. You're just reigniting a flame that just was dormant because nobody knew about it. So it's kind of, really changed my trajectory. And now we're very fortunate that hopefully in the next couple months we'll have the initial foundation set up. So now, at this point now, I feel like it's my duty to at least present the opportunity to the people of my island and the greater Caribbean, Puerto Rico, all down island, to give them a place where they can learn a career that can just change the lives of so many, as I've seen and has happened to
Well,
me.
kudos, and keep us posted. Would love to support
Definitely.
in any way
Definitely.
possible. So yeah, that's amazing. And these things that we don't know, this is why there is a need to show and to promote these kind of things. But I want now to go back to the idea of collection as identity. And this is also what we've been talking about. It is also in the same domain. But I wanted to ask you, if a watch collection is an exhibit of a life, how do you advise clients to reconcile personal meaning with market realities?
This is a tough question, especially after COVID. Before COVID, this is the easiest question. Buy what you love. Don't worry about it. If it resonates with you, if it makes you happy, if it just tingles something inside of you, even if it's a neon yellow, glow in the dark, whatever, just buy it. Enjoy it. And that used to be the only thing I needed to say, right? Now, since the pandemic and since so many more amazing people have joined into our amazing hobby, that I think was kind of a secret that we didn't realize, and now the secret's out. You've seen prices of watches just explode, from Rolex to AP to F. Fusion, which has went from a watch that you could get easily at a discount, maybe wait a few months if you wanted something very, very specific, to a watch where, waiting 3 years is a short wait if you want something that isn't a quartz piece, and pieces that you bought for 50,000, 60,000 are now $1 million pieces in some instances, 600,000, 500,000. You don't even know what to do with your insurance policy. So it has changed how you buy these watches and how you view watches, because now this is a fortified asset class, right? So when I speak to collectors, and because this is a big thing, is how to reconcile with this, because you've seen the things grow so much, and a lot of collectors have went from a collection of watches they just loved and just were very passionate about, and they just fell in love with these independent watchmakers making these crazy things, into a portfolio of investment grade art, basically. So I always tell people, you still have to listen to rule number one, which is buy what you love. And really, the collection is an extension of yourself. You do have to be aware of the economics of what you're buying and what you're trading and getting into. I do think that this should be a secondary point, but I do also think you need to kind of compartmentalize your brain a little bit, right? If you're going to be a collector who's going to be really looking for investment, that's okay. But understand that's what you're doing. And we have different rules for collecting a watch for investment or speculation or something like that. If you just want to truly collect and invest, then you put on a different type of cap on. You want to know where your losses is. You want to know your ups and your downs, but just to know, right? Just to know in case you might want to trade in towards something else in the future. You don't care if a watch drops 30% beyond that. In the other category, if your watch drops 10, 15%, you might be urged to sell it or trade it. But I know so many people who I can't buy the Jordan back from them. I could give somebody $1 million profit right now. He just wants to talk to me about football. He doesn't want to. It's okay. It's my watch. So I really have to, in these days, first, FOMO is the biggest issue that we're dealing with right now. I'll be honest with you. Because if you're a new collector, how do you get a watch? How do you get a Rolex? How do you get an AP? How do you get a Patek? How do you get a Jordan? So you feel like you need to jump in at anything new and shiny, because, like, oh my gosh, if I don't buy it now, I'm never gonna get it, or I'm gonna have to spend $1 million just to get one simple watch. So a lot of what I do right now is just help people pump the brakes and let them know the sky isn't falling. And hey, you might miss a watch today, but there are literally millions of watches, and there's so many amazing watchmakers that you need to get that part out of your head, because then you're not buying what you love. You're not even buying what you lust after. You're buying what other people lust after, hoping that what's happening right now is a lot of arranged marriages, right? There are a lot of people who are getting hitched, and they're hoping that we're gonna make love happen. Don't worry, the love will come. And this is watches, man. You gotta love first. You got to see that watch. You got to feel that watch. You got to put that watch and something in that watch. And you just had this conversation like, all right, we're going to be together. When you buy a watch because all your friends were in love with that watch, and Hodinky told you, and CQ, the watch guy, told you to buy it, and they love it. And somebody said, hey, if you buy it here, it's going to be worth more than 200%. But then you receive that watch and you don't love it. You don't want to wear it. Every time you go to wear it, you try to force yourself. It's not a good match. And guess what? Then you want to sell the watch, right? And if it's an F Fusion to tell you, or a lot of other brands, I don't want to just point them out, but a lot of other brands, you go to sell that watch, they're not going to buy it from you. And as a matter of fact, if you let them know you're selling it, they're going to tell you, hey, you can't get any more watches from us. So now you've made this arranged marriage, and in this religion, divorce is a very tricky thing, my friend. And what do? Now you're in an unhappy home, and you're somebody who's grouchy every time people talk to you. You're grouchy. You're complaining. Oh, I got this watch, I didn't. And then you just, the whole joy, all this thing we've talked about, of passion and friends and funds, you've lost out because you just went and jumped into an arranged marriage because I told you should buy a watch, or because you read an article. So to me, that's one of the biggest issues that I have to help people reconcile with, is really love what you're getting into. Yes, there's a big, financial impact, and the numbers that we talk about, especially on the higher end side, can get crazy, and we have to be responsible to our wallets and to our futures. But at the end of the day, this is a hobby of passion, and you need to really be in love and really get married for the right reasons. And the people who made the most on watches like F. Fusion, they're the people who just loved the watches. They 10, 15 years ago, they just saw this guy making crazy tourbillons, and they're like, all right, 40, 50,000, with no hope of getting 10%, 20% back. There is no market for these watches. Up in 2018, 2017, you could get a chronometric blue for 20,000, 24,000. So imagine 2010, 2011, there was no market. So the people who really reaped crazy ROIs on their watches were honestly supporters of the man, supporters of the business, and people who enjoyed the watches. That's it. There is no, so that's the thing, is you have to really decide, are you going to really get married for the right reasons,
I love this analogy.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that the Instagram and the YouTube is also going to love the analogy. I loved your answer, and I agree with you on everything that you said. But I wanted to stop somewhere, because there's a lot of rumors in this industry.
Yes.
And one of the things that I wasn't able to maybe find facts, and this is why, because you open it up, maybe it would be nice for me to ask you, is there is this rumor that also financial institutions are looking into watches as they would look into wine, or as they would look into art, and start collecting them for merely financial institutions. Do you have any knowledge about that, or do you come across that at all?
So, like as of right now, I don't have any immediate knowledge of one, but there have been watch funds before. So it'd be foolish to think that there are watch funds before the pandemic. So it'd be foolish to think after the pandemic there aren't watch funds or private investors who are pooling together, who are also collectors, pooling their money together and making some type of financial instrument out of it. One of the best examples was Alfredo Peramico, who's a big, amazing collector, ex-banker as well. He had a watch fund for many years. I'm sure it's still in existence. I don't know the details. And that was doing well before all of this. So I definitely think there are those type of players in the industry right now. When you see the prices of some of these watches are going beyond FP Journe, right? FP Journe, you can sit down and you can kind of understand what's going on there, but you're seeing pocket watches all of a sudden have an amazing comeback. Very, brands, Charles Forsham, Great British Watchmakers and things like that getting really, really supported. And you can tell that, again, probably their group of collectors, maybe a few investment folks out there who are saying, listen, if we just buy some of these, we can just we buy the best examples, put them in a vault, we bring them back to auction in a decade or so, and we can really track what's going on here. I think it'd be foolish to not think that's going on. It's just, it's watches, so you'll never truly know. But again, there was that public one that ran by Alfredo Piramico. So I'm sure somewhere out there's a lot of private ones in the fray as well.
Yeah, most probably. And today, when we look at the collectors, we see that many of the young collectors, they actually seek access and community even more than rarity or investment maybe. So how do you think that changed the broader dynamics of demand, myth making, and historical significance in watches?
Yeah, so what's happening now as we're fading away from the flipper culture, and we realize that we can't just buy a watch and sell a watch. You're going to lose some money. We're getting back to true enthusiasts, right? And true enthusiasts are coming back and they're bringing a lot of their new friends, and a lot of new people who never jumped into watches before jumping in. And the great thing about buying a watch today, if you're open, you can meet and touch the people who are actually making your watches. So once you experience that, once your friend tells you about this crazy independent watchmaker, hey, you want to go to Watch Time NYC, they'll be there. You want to go to Indies NYC, they'll be there. Or can you make it to Switzerland? Let's do something crazy. You could come to Dubai Watch Week with me, and you can touch and you can feel and you can ask them a million questions, and they're so happy to give you that knowledge and tell you things and take your curiosity and help you spin these different ways. And if you want a bespoke piece, there's so many amazing. One of the best examples today is Satori Biard and on what Armand is doing over there. For under 6,000, you can make pretty much anything out there. Of course, it gets higher if you want to get crazy with the materials, but you can make a watch that truly is yours, that truly speaks to you, and you don't have to pay six figures for it. And I think with this availability of these options and this community being there is just really driving the force, and the community aspect as well. Because now there's so many great groups like the Jabs Club and CP Time and Watch Society and all these great clubs where before you take that first step, you get to talk to Eddie, you get to talk to a CQ, you get to go to a room with us. And you with the watch industry, it's the only place where you will not know the person's name and you will chuck him 100,000 watch. Take it. Wear it. Why are you bringing it back to me? Why are you holding it delicate? No, bend the strap up. I don't care. Imagine that. Imagine if you went to a car meetup, somebody's there with a Bugatti and he's like, here, take the keys, go for a spin. I don't care. It doesn't happen. Maybe in some places, if I bring a nice car too, you're like, okay, you kind of gauge my bank account with the car I bring. But watches, I've seen it over and over again where somebody has this cool hot watch under 3,000, and here's a guy with a $500,000. I want to see that Tissot PRX. I want to see. I want to see the Christopher Warbuck content. It's like, hey, take the Richard Mille. I don't care. I want to see this. And I think that community, that excitement, it's really showing the new generation of collectors how to do it. And these new generation of collectors are there are many ages. There are many ages. So if they're in a position and they're blessed to have the capital to collect on a higher side, once you go independent, you don't go back, right? Once you can talk to a Recep Regepi, once you can talk to a Ludovic Baloard, Peter Medat, Pierre Biver, why would you spend your money on a commercial giant who doesn't, you got to chase him down for a leather strap? You're going to talk to 5 people before you could talk to somebody who really even knows what they're talking about. So the world is changing because how does a big brand compete with somebody who will come to dinner. Romain Gauthier, is a independent watchmaker who just so supportive right now, because such a great person, a genius watchmaker, business person, and somebody who loves to entertain and loves to entangle with the community and speak with the collectors and answer every stupid question or not stupid question, or there is no stupid question. And once you have that type of experience, I'm where else am I going to spend my $100,000? I'm not. I want somebody who wants to share a great glass of wine with me and we talk about nothing all day. That's what life is all about.
Definitely. And I wanted to ask, if we accept that watches are artifacts of power, economic, cultural, social, how do you personally define the difference between buying a watch and collecting watches?
That's oh man, that's a great question, right? Because I think every day I deal with the two types. I deal with the person who's just buying a watch, and I deal with the person who's truly collecting a watch or collecting a timepiece. And it's like the hat has to go on and off, and the differentiator is what that watch means to you, in my opinion. If you're just buying a watch, it's just like a shirt, accessory, right? It could just be a fashion accessory, a high-end fashion accessory, but it's just accessory. People who collect watches truly collect watches, even though there's a lot of different reasons you collect, where it might be for historical reasons, for sentimental reasons, whatever strategy you come up with, there's a strategy. There's a reason why you collect. You're not just buying this because it looks good, or this is the one watch I've been working towards forever, so this is just going to be my one nice watch or something. You really have connected to this watch for multiple reasons beyond the fashion aspect. And I think that's what's the difference. I think in the buy category as well is that investor collector who just sees this as a transaction, who's just, there are people who buy watches just to make sure when they enter the right rooms that they're seen a certain way. I think that's a good reason to buy a watch as well too. But that person is a buyer of a watch. That's not a collector of a watch. And I don't think it has anything to do with price point. I know amazing collectors who only buy Seiko watches, and when you talk to them, it's like they could tell you every up and down and everything. And I know the same who have big F. Journe collectors and everywhere in between. And I think it's not about price point, but it's about, like you said, the longevity, right, of what you want out of it. And I think a person who's buying a watch is buying an accessory. They're just looking to have something that looks nice with them when they go out. The person who's collecting the watch is, buying extensions of themselves in different ways, and they're collecting stories and collecting memories and trying to do. They look at it at a whole different way than the person who just wants a single transaction or two.
So if I'm a collector and I come to you and I say, hey, CQ, I want to build a collection. I don't want to only buy watches. What are the filters that you would put or that you would suggest so you can help me build a narrative worthy collection then?
Yeah, so it's a lot of self-reflection. What's your taste?
Mm-hmm.
What's your risk appetite? And you have to experiment. That's the biggest thing is how many watches have you bought before? Because everyone has to go through the period of buying a watch they don't like for the wrong reasons and realizing that they don't like it later. You need to develop your taste. Taste can evolve, right? Taste can evolve as you get older, as things happen in your life. You might become more active, less active, wear work stuff, wear more casual things, but you need to develop your taste. Right. And once we figure out what your taste is, we need to figure out what's your why. Why are you collecting right now? Why are you buying watches? Right? Are you to a place where you have the capital saved up? You've told yourself, man, when I get to a certain point, I'm going to enjoy my collecting. Great. So why? I can tell you for me, when I really open up on my collecting, there's going to be a couple pillars that I look to collect. One will be watches that I couldn't afford when I first sold them. So all the brands, Chopard, JLC, Patek Philippe, all these great brands that I sold that I couldn't, imagine affording a Patek back then. I couldn't even think of a buying a Reverso. And now I'm like, oh man, I get to think about each watch that was special to me when I sold it. right? And I had this great emotion when I sold it. I get to go back and buy that watch now. So for JLC, it would be a JLC Dual Met chronograph. For a Patek, it'll be a Patek 5960R, and so on and so forth. But then on the flip side, from a historical context, one of the most important brands in my personal life is Breitling. If I didn't really work to sell Breitlings in the retail store that I work to sell, I wouldn't be able to do what I did today. So for me, I want to collect every Navi timer from 1952 on. The Navi timer has been the oldest continuously produced chronograph ever made from the 50s upwards, and I want to be the old guy with this crazy Breitling Navi timer collection. And for me, I just always wanted like a big reason to collect vintage watches, but not just blindly. And just way back, I looked at all the Navi timers that were ever made, and I was like, this will be a fun journey, because a lot of them will be very, very easy, but then you get down to like, oh man, they only made a few of this variation. I can't wait until it's done, until I'm hunting like in some market in Dubai or Hong Kong or somewhere, and I'm like, I finally found this Navi timer from 57 that like they said I couldn't find anymore. And that's what it's all about, right? It's finding what ignites your passion, what ignites the reason, the hunt. The hunt is so much a part of it. And for me, just getting back to, talking to a new collector, really helping them figure out how to tackle the space, you got to really find out what excites you, and you have to get away from what everybody else says should excite you, and why you should collect, and why this should be in your collection, and why you should get this is this. You really got to figure out what will make you stay up at 2 a.m. on Chrono 24. That's a real thing. Because as crazy as it sounds, and your wife is looking at you like, what's going on? It makes you happy. And that's what it should be about. To me, you work so hard, no matter what you do, you work so hard for this money. If you spend it for something like a watch that, again, is going to be your travel partner, is going to be a reflection of yourself that you look at every day, you should really love it. And you got to figure out why you love it. And that why is a very individual thing. And you have to go through your experimental phase. You have to make the mistakes. You have to buy all the watches people told you, until you get to a point where somebody can show you all these amazing watches that just came out and like you shouldn't be able to get. But hey, do you want it? As soon as you can say, no, it's not for me, and not think about, the greatest test is if somebody can present to you a 5711 today and you just say, no, not for me. I think, to me, that's a great test of collecting. Now, many people will be like, oh, you're stupid for, not making it. That's easy money. You could turn that into this. This could be real estate. That could be business. Yes, 100%. And I'm a capitalist. I'm a money guy. But I'm also then closing the door on somebody who really wants that watch, and who all they wanted in that is that knowledge, right? And then I go back to that first person I saw buying a Patek and being so happy with their family. And I personally could never deny somebody that joy just for a quick flip. I couldn't, and to me, that's, a real test there.
And you see, that's what we're talking about, passion. You have someone here who has all the most expensive watches in the world, and I'm sure you love all of them, but you're talking so passionately about bright Navi timers from 50s that are not as expensive or as complicated as others. And at the same time, we are so fortunate to see all these best watches in the world.
Yeah.
And then I get excited when I see a Memovox that I don't have, and it popped up somewhere in the other side of the world, and I need to somehow have it because I'm just obsessed with Memovoxes, as I'm learning you are with Breitling. But this is not about me. This is about you. So that's important. And if we look ahead, CQ, what do you believe will be the next frontier where horology and politics intersect beyond traditional auctions and beyond recognizable brands?
Yeah, so I think it really goes back to the emergent brands that we don't even know about today.
Mm-hmm.
And the watchmakers that we haven't heard about today in all these different countries, who have gotten the education and they figured out they want to make great watches, the community of collectors who are then supporting them, and then that happening. I do really think the the democratization of it is coming a lot sooner than people think. And I think an interesting thing is going to happen because you're going to have the old guard, right, who's going to want to protect things. We always wonder, why does every watch come out and it seems like it has to cost 100,000? Time only watch, of course, there's a lot of things that go into it, but it's like, it seems like, certain people could make certain watches for 30,000 before. Now it has to be 80,000, and everybody has to raise prices at the same time, and everybody has to march in the same line. And I think as we start to see more producers of high quality and of high interest, I should say, pop up in different countries who are not marching in the same line, who are doing their own thing, we're going to start to see splintering. We're going to start to see people trying to figure out, how do I earn my collector's money? How do I get people? And I think this shakeup is going to be really interesting for the industry and positive for the consumer, right? The best thing about the pandemic market to me is it brought in so many new faces, not only from the consumer side, but on the watchmaking side as well, because it shows so many people that, hey, you could be an independent watchmaker and make your own brand and have success and not be a struggling artist and not be able to pay your bills forever and ever. Now, some people are doing it for good reasons. Some people are doing it for bad reasons. Some people are really talented. Some people are not talented, but that's life, and that will let things fall where they may. So I think, the political atmospheres that we're seeing, especially like things with the tariffs in the US, and just different countries making different moves and becoming different buying centers. Like we said with mainland China, so many people bet so heavily on mainland China, and now mainland China is so soft. Who's going to be that next giant? Because there are going to be other places beyond the US. We see the Middle East doing so strong because so many other countries, expats are living in places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So now that's becoming a huge region for it. So there are other places that are going to really ignite in terms of being a consumer base, and the smart brands are going to get in there and they're going to figure out, how do we tailor our product to these specific markets. And I think the biggest thing is we're going to see watchmakers and brands rise who will not just be fly by night operations, who, as we were speaking about earlier, they will have that longevity. Because I think that is what you're looking for if you are a brand or watchmaker, you're starting a business. You don't really care about, of course you care about the money, but you don't care about the immediate success. You care if in 30 to 40 years, if your brand name is still being talked about, if people are still enjoying your watches, if people are still writing about your watches. And I think that's what it's really about.
I definitely agree with that. And whatever these developments are, they are all for the benefit and for the good of the community as well. But
Yes.
now something more personal. If a historian 50 years from now were to write a chapter titled CQ and the redefinition of collecting, what subtitle would you hope to choose for that chapter?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. It would be something, I don't know, like the pursuit, the pursuit of happiness through time without fear. Because a lot of my journey is the pursuit of this passion that I didn't know I have, which is the watch industry and horology as a whole. And a lot of that is me trying to find happiness of like, why, I'm selling watches. Why do I sell watches? Come on, I should be doing so many other things with my life beyond selling watches. And it's been opening up all these doors that I think most would be very afraid to do, and take a lot of leaps that many would not do. Very early on in my career, I got a chance to go sell watches in Alaska, and everybody was like, why would you sell who's buying watches in Alaska? And it turned out to be one of the best experiences of my life. And I spent 5 summers selling watches in Alaska, and I can't wait to get back to Alaska. It was just such a great experience of growth, not just in my journey of watch collecting, but in life and becoming an adult and a person as well. And then you fast forward to me doing all these great things in 1916, to being in Dubai for 2.5 years, like managing a watch company, like training people to do what I love, interacting with so many people from all over the culture. And again, these are things when I remember when I first told a lot of people like, hey, I have this opportunity. Many people are like, why would you do that? Things are going good here in the US. Why would you do this? This, that. Why would you take that jump? One of the best decisions of my life. So my life is really that. it's me trying to find happiness through my passion, which is horology, and choosing to do that without fear. So I think, if the story was written, or if I got a chapter in a book, I think that would be a great way to sum up what I got going on.
Well, whoever is writing about book, here they have it. You help them with just deciding on the subchapter. I kind of forced the chapter name to you, and now you're talking about the subchapter. CQ, this has been such an amazing conversation. I don't know how 1 hour has passed.
I know, right?
But before I let you go, I want to ask you the last question. What is a collector for you? And then what is a watch collector?
A collector for me is somebody who collects items that brings joy to them, and that those items have some sort of line connecting them, whether it be style, whether it be a time period, whether it be an aesthetic, whether it be a manufacturer, designer, or maker. And I think a watch collector is somebody who is collecting timepieces along some type of thread. That thread may be chronographs. That thread may be a brand like Breitman. That thread might be just the color of the dial, or that thread might just be watchmakers who made an impression upon them, But everything has a line. And I think once you can draw a line from this watch to that watch, it doesn't matter what that line is, you're collecting, and you're truly collecting watches.
Well, that's amazing. And hearing that kind of definition from somebody that has been so involved with collectors from different parts of life, from different parts of backgrounds, that is amazing. And man, thank you for sharing all this knowledge and everything here at Watches and Politics. A lot of people, when I tell them Watches and Politics, they are kind of, wary about, hey, I'm not political, but this is not about it. Politics is everywhere. I just wanted to tell a story about how politics and watches and watchmaking have historically affected each other. And one of them is trends and the collectors as political actors and auctions and styles and different things that we've touched upon here, including the assembly factories in the Virgin Islands. I think this has been amazing. Thank you very much, my friend, for sharing this with us.
It's been a great pleasure, Eddie. An hour went by so fast. I hope we can do a part 2 on season 3. I'd be honored. But thank you so much, and this has been an amazing conversation.
I can't wait to do another part soon.